Why was it ever hard to believe that the coronavirus we've come to know as COVID-19 escaped from a lab in China and infected the world? Is that the most likely explanation? Well, it is to me, but there's also the likely explanation that it was transmitted from animals at a wet market, animals at a fish and fresh meat market, to human beings, because the conditions in China are crowded and they're not always as sanitary as we're used to in the first world. Both of those are credible. But it's only just recently that the Western world's leaders have come to accept that it's possible China created this virus in a lab and let it escape. I don't know how come that's difficult to believe, but it's a serious possibility when people like the U.S. Anti-disease doctor Anthony Fauci finally comes around to saying, yes, I guess it's possible. He's been saying it was a kooky theory for over a year. Even Tedros Adhanom, who is the Director General of the World Health Organization, said, yes, it's a possibility, we need to study this more. And that's after his own organization had sent a team to China in January and February to investigate the origin, a team that was only allowed to see what the Chinese government wanted them to see, only allowed to write what the Chinese government would allow them to write. Even the head of the World Health Organization, which is as politically correct and as China-friendly as any organization, he says we need to look at this more. So who isn't looking at this? Why, our own Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. This week in the House of Commons, when Conservative MP Candice Bergen said, hey, we had a couple of scientists at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg who were marched out of the place in July of 2019 and fired in January of 2021 because they were suspected of passing on information to the Chinese, and more specifically to the Chinese military. Hey, is there any connection there? Because as early as 2018, the U.S. State Department had warned that the Wuhan Institute of Virology, the big lab that the Chinese have for studying viruses, the Wuhan Institute of Virology was working on pumping up the SARS virus, making it easier to spread. And the State Department officials who had visited were worried that was going to spread outside the laboratory. At the same time, we had two people, Xingao Qiu and Keding Cheng, a husband and wife couple of researchers, who were passing or suspected of passing information on to the Chinese. CSIS has warned the Canadian government about them, and that's why they've now been fired. But what does the Prime Minister do when Candice Bergen, the Conservative MP from Manitoba, asks about this in the House of Commons this week? He says, I am not going to cast aspersions on any Canadians of Chinese origin. This is just racism. It's just racism. That's all you're interested in. It's nothing about racism. You have an authoritarian communist government, which is suspected by several intelligence agencies around the world of having souped up a virus, let it loose from a laboratory by accident, and infected the world. Why is it important to know? Because if we're ever going to stop one of these pandemics again, we have to know where this one came from. The world has to demand, including the Canadian government, that the Chinese government allow independent investigators into their country to examine everything about where this virus came from. Not because we need to point fingers at the Chinese, but because we need to know how this happened so it won't happen again.